to you. I'm going to start off with a question addressed to each of our panelists, and I'd like to give them a few moments to address that. The question is, why are small businesses important to the community and economic development? Based on your experience, what have you seen? Please, Elizabeth, will you begin?
Good afternoon, everyone. Is this working?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you hear? Okay, it's not working, please.
All right, how about now? All right, thank you. It's a pleasure and honor to be here, and I echo Christian Dorsey's comments. It's wonderful to see people in 3 dimensions. As was introduced, I was long active in Arlington planning. I was a former planning commissioner, but Kim asked me here today to talk about a national study that I've done on legacy businesses. So I'm speaking really in that context. One issue, and by the way, there's a report on your table, I think one copy of this study, but that study immediately got outdated because every year is a growing number of cities approaching this from a variety of motivations, from economic development, from historic preservation, to anti-displacement concerns. So these legacy business programs are really exploding, often in places like Arlington that are concerned about rapid growth and displacement. Not only displacement and gentrification concerns, but also this concern, as one city says, of blandification. This idea, not just aesthetically, but culturally, are we losing part of our identity while we're embracing this welcome economic growth? But what can we do? So in general, again, this concept of a legacy business can have a negative connotation, like it's something outdated. But on the contrary, really a growing number of communities are putting this label on enterprises they cherish and want to support. It's also really an increasing equity concern. A key part, you know about the 3-legged sustainability tool, and besides economics and environmental, social and cultural sustainability is vital to a strong place and a strong economy. So along with environmental and economic, we have to think about social sustainability. I also think these small businesses, as you see, are pathways for populations that in some cases were excluded from wealth accumulation through home ownership. So these businesses are really the way that people are passing on a legacy to their own children and grandchildren. So I can speak more specifically about legacy business programs, but I think my time would be up. I'm going to pass it on to Marlene. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Now mine went out. Hello. Awesome. Nice to see all of you again in person, and thank you, Kim, for having us all here. This is an important conversation. Obviously, investing in our women and minority-owned businesses throughout the city is important for a number of reasons, mostly building wealth in areas that previously didn't have access to doing so. And the Pike has been a prime example of success in that area. And for that reason, we really need to be intentional about our actions moving forward and how we develop. And I think that part of what we do in economic development in Fairfax City is engage with our development community in the pre-development phase. Prior to the actual launch of a business or a building opening, we have conversations with them about what their retail actually looks like. And if they don't have an idea or concept of what that looks like, we have a pipeline of people ready to move in that we think would really fit in that area and provide an equitable opportunity to those people living there. We're luckily in the fact that Fairfax City is very small. I know every square inch of that city now after only just a year of being there. Arlington's obviously a little bit bigger, but you can be involved in the development process from the get-go here in Virginia and have conversations about what is going in. And I think that most developers will try to be accommodating if you provide an option for a tenant. And so from our perspective, that's been really successful. But once we actually are dealing with our existing businesses that are here, we send them to Tim. If you have a tenant that is looking to create a sustainable financial model that works for them, go to the SBDC. They have every resource that you can possibly imagine and go through your financials line by line to make sure that you can move forward successfully. Additionally, there are a number of programs that we've implemented that directly improve retail-specific companies, including things like facade improvement. A lot of older buildings, for example, that don't necessarily need to be knocked down, just need a facelift. And so sometimes you can just buy some paint, improve the interior a little bit, and that goes a really long way to improving some of those more legacy-oriented businesses. And we've also partnered with George Mason University to implement a marketing program for our minority and women-owned retailers so that they have access to expanding their market and increasing their revenue generation. So those types of partnerships with students and Mason's also obviously very active here in Arlington, and I know that Ryan will probably talk about that, but it's really important, again, to be intentional with your policy actions and where you spend your money. So.
Thank you, Nicole. Tim?
Well, thank you very much for having me. Good afternoon. So one of the things that I guess the question is, are small businesses important? I took a look at Forbes just last week and didn't realize that 99% of our businesses in the United States are actually small businesses. And it accounts for more than half of the jobs that are created, in the country. So you would say, yeah, my job kind of depends on supporting small business. So yeah, we'd think it's pretty important. So from the standpoint of where we come in, the SBDC, we're actually part of a collective within the university called Mason Enterprise. Not only do we run the statewide SBDC program, that's 27 centers throughout Virginia, we're also home to the Virginia PTAC, Procurement Technical Assistance Center that supports government contractors, home to the Northern Virginia Women's Business Center, and 5 incubators. So we support a small business community statewide, and of course we feel that rising tides float all boats. Our center focuses on Arlington, Fairfax, Prince William, and Loudoun counties, and we're providing one-on-one free business counseling. We've got 16 counselors that have a great deal of experience to support almost any business need, and that includes everything from starting a business to access to capital to the marketing side, and of course all the other aspects of running a business, including HR, IT, accounting, legal, IT, cybersecurity. We've got domain expertise in all of those areas, and then we cover all those industries from technology to government contracting, professional services, education, home daycare, from healthcare to retail and food service. So we really try and make sure we have resources that cover everybody. And what we often talk about, and President Washington will say, what did we do last year? It was over $3.6 billion worth of economic impact that came from 40,000 hours of counseling we did statewide.
Thank you, Tim. Ryan?
Thanks. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. I actually came here today from the Pike. We just got done walking the whole thing this morning as part of my business district tours that I'm doing. This was the third one of 7. And I got to tell you, I came from Alexandria. I lived in Alexandria for a long time. I live in Fairfax now. So I hadn't been on the Pike since my, let's say 10 years ago when I lived in Shirlington. And I'm just impressed and amazed by the vibrancy and the progress we're seeing all along the corridor. The public investments that are being put in there are making a true difference. It's walkable, it's pedestrian friendly. You see the diversity of businesses there, and you also just feel the change and the progress that's taking place. And I would also note the housing opportunities, which is critically important to have along the Pike. As the director, I've been spending a lot of time in the community, trying to get to know our opportunities and our challenges. And I'll just say on the small business front, small businesses are important because they're the backbone of our economy. The stat that you just gave, 99% of all small businesses are under 500, or all businesses are under 500 employees. In Arlington, we have over 900 small businesses. Three-fourths of all of our businesses are under 10 employees. So just think about that. That is a lot of need and a lot of economic potential. So at AED, our Biz Launch team, which is our small business development team, we're really working every day with clients in a couple of ways. We can do that through one-on-one counseling. We host programs and workshops, and we get out into the community and meet with business owners and talk to them. And find out what we can do to help. And so I'll talk a little bit about our programs maybe later during the panel discussion, but I just want to convey to everyone that part of our team's economic growth strategy is going to be to continue to focus on the growth and the resiliency of our small business community, because it's critical to our long-term growth, not just here in this zip code, but also throughout the whole county.
Thank you, Ryan. I'm going to begin with a couple of targeted questions so that we can get the benefit of the expertise of each of our panelists in particular areas. Nicole, you had started to tell us about the programs that you help facilitate. Could you go into a little more detail? You talked about, a paint job on the interior, facade improvements, office tenant improvements. What are some of the things that your office can do for businesses that might be represented here?
Yeah, so those are the two programs that are coming actually to launch. We had previously done a facade improvement program that was wildly successful and ran out of funding in just a few months. So we're doing another round of that in a few months once we get the approval for it. And another thing is also general attraction measures specific. We're also lucky in that because we're small, we are able to target based on our conversations with commercial real estate director assessment team, basically, what buildings need some help in making sure they have quality tenants so that we receive the highest net revenue in terms of county taxes. And so we're able to say, okay, if we're able to fill this priority space with a really quality tenant, we can help them with the build out of that space, because at the end of the day, this is all a numbers game. And typically, if you have a legacy business and they're redeveloped, they just cannot afford the higher rent. But if you can help them with a build out, for example, of that space so that they don't have to use their upfront funds for that sort of a thing, it really helps them get a leg up in being able to create a sustainable financial model. So that's another thing that we've been doing in our priority buildings specifically. But facade improvement, it's a kind of a feel-good thing, but it does actually help bring new and unique businesses to the districts.
Just one follow-up. When you had talked a little bit about partnerships to make that happen, you were saying that the funds were expended very quickly because there was such a great need. The partnerships that you're speaking about, are they helpful in-kind service, or what do you mean?
Well, I mean, for that, for example, we have merchants associations, you all have bids. And so the retail component for every economic development authority, that relationship with your business improvement districts or the Columbia Pike Partnership are essential to getting in contact with your local retailers. And so their promotion and their relationships are very essential.
Thank you so much. Elizabeth, I'd like to ask, in your work and research, you have seen how different jurisdictions develop and support legacy business programs. Can you tell us about some of these programs and how they specifically support diverse businesses and communities?
Sure. Thank you very much again. I'm going to quote from some of the cities that have adopted legacy businesses and see if this sounds familiar, those of you working on the Pike. Serial entrepreneurs, the soul of San Francisco, businesses that make Austin feel like home, the bedrock of our community, an essential part of our brand. Third places, which as many of you know, are really critical spaces that are not your work and not your home, but places like bars, restaurants, even extending to places like frame shops and dry cleaners where you establish relationships with people you normally wouldn't and mingle and develop valuable social capital. So this is motivating a lot of communities around the country. I'll talk about a general definition of legacy business for those people who have adopted something like a legacy business program. In general, long-standing independent businesses that have contributed to community character and vitality. In general, and again, I have a long study. I'm going to try to squish it into 3 minutes. A lot of these, as I mentioned already, are high-growth cities like San Francisco or Austin. Smaller communities outside of a big city like Cambridge, Massachusetts, Evanston, Illinois, Pasadena. Medium-sized cities like Durham, North Carolina, San Antonio. Recently, big cities like San Francisco, who was the originator of this concept nationwide, and also Los Angeles and Boston are really grappling and trying to figure out ways to establish legacy businesses which won't be any kind of panacea for these large economic forces, but a way to raise awareness and possibly direct public investment and private enthusiasm and nonprofit activism to recognizing and sustaining these businesses. Typically, if you think about a definition, generally people are thinking about a generation, which about 20 or 25 years would be a threshold for most programs. I've seen as little as 10 and as long as 50. There's typically some sort of language about a specific historic or cultural contribution that a business has made to the community. Interestingly, despite this historic and cultural language, most of the programs I've seen from the public sector come out of economic development or a Main Street kind of organization. So they're recognizing that cultural and social heritage is an economic contributor. Interestingly, as I've noted, the drivers of these programs can be not the public sector. Interestingly, I've seen a couple that are driven by newspapers and local media that spotlight and maintain a list of legacy businesses. Often nonprofit organizations are the ones that do the initial public awareness raising. As you know, in public policy, often you build up legitimacy by doing some sort of soft informational campaign, build up awareness, and then maybe only then proceed to financial incentives or something like that. So why do we care? Again, from a historic preservation point of view, which is sort of the realm that I grew out of, this is seen as a way to recognize the contribution of people and stories that we don't always typically recognize in historic preservation. You know, really important narratives that I'm so thrilled to see Sushmita and the partnership really engaged in talking about oral histories, intangible heritage, customs, things that really tie people to the community. Again, from the sustainability point of view, cultural and social sustainability, maintaining the traditions and supporting networks and symbols of community identity are seen as really important. I'm going to just briefly touch on a couple of kinds of programs. Again, some are just public awareness, making a registry, a list, or an inventory is sort of the bedrock of good public policy. So just sort of looking at what you have. San Francisco has by far the most robust program. They have a lot of money since the public approved a ballot initiative to support legacy businesses way back in 2014. Other cities like Boston have $1 million in a fund for operations, rent stabilization and physical improvements. Succession planning is something that cities often offer. Legal consultation. Sometimes these are things cities are doing anyway, and they try to give a special preference or divert to someone on the legacy business list. My favorite example like this is in Cambridge, Massachusetts, where they've put legacy business information on their bike share stations. I mean, that didn't cost any money, but you know, it's a way of using the tools the city has to try to promote what's seen as a public good. I am used to speaking for 3 hours to graduate students, so you're going to have to play me off. I think my 3 minutes are over, but I encourage you to get in touch with me if you're interested. We have copies of this report here, and again, this field is developing really quickly. In 1 month, I've spoken 3 times about this to different locations. So anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I think we all share your excitement about what's happening, and all of us are manifesting that excitement in different ways, so we appreciate you. Tim, I wanted to go in and drill down on the other types of businesses you assist, not just SWaM, and also pulling together the idea of economic engine, what George Mason is doing as sort of a glue in this region and statewide. Could you talk about that?
Oh, absolutely. We would say that, and right now the stats are actually, majority of our businesses that we support are actually women-owned businesses. Minority are 46%, 17% veteran-owned. So we do find that it is the SWaM community that is reaching out to us. But where do we start? We think it's important to understand, well, what value does a business actually offer? So we take it down to what we call value proposition design. Rather than charge into a marketplace thinking, oh, I know what I want to sell to that marketplace, can we validate that marketplace first? Can we actually go out and talk to potential customers, understand what needs and wants do they really have? And we can do that in almost any type of industry. Take government contracting. We get a lot of, you would say, entrepreneurs saying, I'd really like to get a government contract. Well, we'd say, well, first let's understand what you offer, and then understand, well, who actually has this challenge that you can actually solve for them. And that's really the cornerstone of where we start. And we do that extensively in the technology community, but we can filter that down into almost any type of small business that's being supported out there. When we think then how do we take it to the next step? We now look to validate a business model. So what does that mean? Can you find enough customers that can generate enough revenue after your expenses, make a profit? So it's not just adding value, but can you add value and make a sustainable business out of it? So that really is the cornerstone of where we focus, literally at the university level, when we think about what we do at the incubator level, what we do at the program level, all kind of focus in these same areas. The other thing that we do is don't think we can do it within a silo. We work collectively as a network, and we can bring the right resources at the right time during any stage of a business's, you would say, evolution. So really, I think it really starts with that initial conversation, understanding where does that entrepreneur or that business owner really want to take their business, and then really come up with a reasonable plan that gets them there.
Thank you, Tim. Ryan, we recognize that even with our best efforts, sometimes we cannot retain all of our diverse small businesses. What are some other measures we might consider, and what can we do to attract and retain new small businesses that serve our diverse community? You said that 3/4 of the business have fewer than 10 employees. This is a big issue. Access to capital has been something that's been mentioned over and over by businesses. What can you do to assist in those areas?
Yeah, I think the first thing, and it gets back to something we heard in our video, and it's been talked a lot about today, is partnership. And I think for us, when we think about supporting small businesses, we have to have a relationship with that small business, and that takes building trust. And just today, when we were sitting in a restaurant with our staff, that business owner talked about how they started with a food truck, then they got their restaurant, now they're onto their second restaurant. And they talked about that took time and that took dedication on their end, but it also took our team being able to go out and talk to them and meet them where they are. That's key. Our programs need to be easy to understand, they need to be accessible, and they need to be effective. And I think we're doing that right now, whether we call it a legacy program or not, or we put a fancy name on it. We're doing that every day in our community thanks to our team. And we're doing that in ways that are really supporting not just the folks that know to come to get to us, but we're also going out and reducing those barriers to entry through like our Biz Launch and Espanol program. Like that's a great example of us dedicating staff members and team members to the entrepreneurs who might be opening their first business for the first time in a new country. So, I mean, those are the kinds of things we're doing every day, and thanks to the board's support, we've been able to build on our programs. So, like this most recent program we're running is Relaunch, and that is giving direct grants to businesses to help them with technical assistance or financial planning or even building a website. And we've brought in outside partners. AWS and RevB are two partners that we're working with. So we try to stack those partnerships up and build partnerships with groups like the Columbia Pike Partnership because it takes more than just one agency. Everyone in this room is an economic developer. Whether you think it or not, you are, because the success of the business community means that our community is going to be successful. Because when our businesses succeed and they grow, that is producing the revenue that's allowing us to reinvest in our communities, like what we're seeing on Columbia Pike. I think the other challenge that I saw a lot and I've heard about and I've seen a lot, both here on Columbia Pike and in other places as it relates to small businesses, those that are here today, is the pressure of redevelopment. And I think it's really important for our team to be communicating and knowing those business owners early on before any kind of plan is adopted. We need to be talking to them and understanding their business. How are they seeing their growth? If they need to move, how can they do that? So, and how can we be supportive of that? So I'm open also to ideas from this group and this community because we, like I said, we're all in this together and we need the best ideas to come forward so we can put that as part of our economic growth strategy.
Thank you, Ryan. At this time, I know the team has collected some questions that I'd like to share with our panel. Thank you so much. We have heard from the county board members about the significant capital investment along Columbia Pike. Can the panelists speak to the importance of those capital investments for our small businesses? Maybe start off with Ryan.
Yeah, sure. I walked on a lot of it today. It's vitally important, and when we talk about public-private partnerships, the investments that we're making in transit and housing and safe streets, those are all helping to promote economic development by allowing these places to grow and progress. And so we're seeing that here, and we're seeing that in other parts of the county. Those are exciting investments that are taking place, bringing storefronts closer to the street. Allowing transit, having multiple transit stops, all of those are really great benefits. I want to go back though to something I mentioned at the beginning though, is the housing opportunities. I mean, the businesses we talked to today said, just like every business we talked to, they're having trouble hiring people. And the more we can have our workers living closer to the businesses that we want to have here, that's going to really be a game changer for us. And so as we talk, whether it's tech talent or somebody working in a restaurant, we need that variety of housing here in Arlington to be able to support the workforce that we really need.
Are there any other of you that would like to take that question or say something about it?
I'll say that it's really helpful to have a space that you can work, live, and play. And so having that housing density around transit accessible corridors and creating a more transit accessible corridor is really important, not only for the health of our economy, but also our retailers and those legacy businesses there, because it creates a space where people will stay and not just come for their laundry and then go home in their car and that's their stay on Columbia Pike. We have that problem in the city is that we don't have walkable neighborhoods in our commercial corridors, and it's a huge problem. People come, do the thing that they need to do, and they leave in their car. And so when you create an environment that allows people to live, work, and play, it increases your retail success exponentially.
Do you have a comment? Okay. Tim, do you have a comment?
Well, I would say at the top of our list is access to capital. So we cultivate significant relationships with our lending community, our angel and venture capital community. We work with our state and local entities around designing grant programs that actually make sense. So oftentimes it is capital often at the top of the list on where we support these businesses. What we always want to know is when there is significant capital going into a capital development program, how much of that actually can filter down to the small business where, are they are they going to be sustainable given some of the challenges with increased costs, lack of resources to be able to sustain growth? Yeah, we think about those problems all the time.
Right. Are there any additional? Yes, great, grand. Thank you. How can we quantify the value of preserving culture and supporting legacy businesses? Would you like to take that one?
I haven't seen it done very often. There is a literature about the value of historic preservation and rehabilitation in general. Things like it tends to create local jobs as opposed to, jobs in construction from big companies. There are studies, anecdotally that talk about businesses that really benefit from a brand like legacy business. It comes up in newspaper articles about them. Cities have the opportunity to provide promotion for them on the websites, produce videos. There's a large literature on the economic contribution of rehabilitation of buildings that's related to legacy businesses, but not necessarily the same thing. But I think a lot of the factors are similar, and I'm happy to kind of point you to that literature as well.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Well, here's another question. The county can dictate items in new developments, like providing art space, etc. Does or could the county require discounted rent for small businesses in those developments for retailers?
Oh, yeah, y'all look at me. I think there's a couple people in this room who can answer that question better than I can. Yeah.
I'll also say, so part of Arlington has a unique proffer system. We actually don't even really have a proffer system in the same way that the rest of Northern Virginia does. And we have a community benefits system where when you exceed a certain height or FAR, you give into AHIF, which promotes affordable housing. And so it's where you want to spend your money. And if we choose to spend that on affordable housing here in Arlington, and as a policy decision, if the community wants to pressure the board to diversify where that funding goes to things like small minority-owned businesses or education, that's the prerogative of the community. But I think that so far, our community has really prioritized affordable housing, and it's shown in the progress that we've made in the affordable housing availability. So we don't really do that in how we do our proffer system, but I don't know, other areas do. Like I think Alexandria maybe has done that on some targeted buildings, but especially for arts, they've required the developer to lease to an art nonprofit at a certain rate for a certain number of years, but it's kind of one-off, from my understanding.
All right, this next question I think is more to Tim and Ryan. What incentives are you offering small businesses to encourage them to reach out to you? How do you allocate resources in terms of build-out, for example? And what are the requirements they need to follow in order to get a grant?
Okay. So I guess first of all, how do they find us? So we spend a lot of time, you would say, doing outreach like this. So we would say, take the SBDC message back to any small business owner that you might be talking to. We work hand in hand with our chambers of commerce and other economic development groups, and especially our EDAs. So we start with not just providing counseling. It's oftentimes it starts with education. So we have anywhere from 5 to 6 workshops a month at our center statewide, and that's eligible for any business owner to attend. Typically, we'll have 20 a week that would be of business subjects that would be valuable to the business owner from an education standpoint. That often is how they get in and understand when we have grant opportunities, when we have the idea that capital is something that is they're really focused on, then we can actually start to put a plan into place to be able to understand eligibility, to understand what needs to be built and how to communicate that, because we always say when you're raising capital, if it's anything but your own money, it's a sales process. So we take them through that process.
So we don't have any active small business grant programs, but I want to make sure I want to make clear that we do provide incentives in other ways. Our relaunch program, for example, which we've put 336 small businesses through in the last 3 fiscal years, that's a value of $10,000 in service for every small business that's gone through that. So we're not giving them cash, but we're helping them be more resilient through helping them with financial planning, giving them technical assistance, helping them build a website so they can do e-commerce. Those are the things that I think, in my experience in Alexandria, I learned after the pandemic is, we had to do some emergency grants. We had to help, save our small businesses during the worst of the pandemic. What we really need to be doing now is building resiliency in our small businesses. That's how we're going to keep them going for the next generation. Lourdes and Alex are from BizLaunch are here today. That's an incentive. We do, and I see Susan in the back as well. We do really good work with small businesses every day, giving them one-on-one counseling, helping them with, again, providing workshops. That is a free service that this county provides to our small businesses. That's an incentive, and again, we do that really, really well. Our bids and our partnerships are helping us with that. So I think investing in ways like that really help to build the resiliency of our small businesses, and then we can hand them over to the SBDC for some of their statewide programs and tapping into other sources of capital. I mean, it's a team effort, and so I think that's kind of how I look at it.
I want to thank all of our panelists this afternoon. I think we have lots to think about. There's a lot of different ways that we can attract new businesses, but a lot of different ways we can attack these challenges. To just give a sum up, because there's so much, I feel like I can't do it justice. There was so much here. But I want to say that the new term, blandification, is something we should keep in mind. I've not heard that before, and I think that we are looking for beauty as well as efficacy in terms of the work that we are doing. We were talking about pathways to wealth, and so as an alternative to minority communities or communities with fewer resources that didn't have housing wealth to pass down, we look at small businesses as another avenue, another pathway that is just as important and just as vital as home ownership in the sense of the wealth that is generated and passed to family and further generations. We talk about intentionality and collaborative networks, deciding we're going to work together, deciding that there's ways that we can meet on certain issues. We may not agree on everything, but deciding that we're going to push through it. That we're talking about the trust and relationships that have to be built and maintained over time, and utilizing the partnerships to understand each business's cycle of growth. And we depend on business owners to talk to us about that. We need your inputs. We need your access to programs. We create programming for what we think you need. If you tell us what you need, we can match you so much better. And we ask the business community, as busy as you are running your businesses, to take some time to be active in that sense so we can understand what exactly it is you're looking for from the entities that can assist you. We talk about public investment, private enthusiasm, cultural and social heritage as an economic contribution, recognizing the stories that can be told, that have been told, that may not have been heard previously. How can we value that? That's the question. But I think we're on a path where we could talk about doing that and making that tangible. When we talk about valuing the business, validating the business, that is something that Tim talked about. There's so much here. I invite you at the close of this program to approach our panelists. I hope they don't mind that, to ask further questions. There was a question I didn't get to, and I apologize, but if I can get your name, I will make sure that you get a response. We appreciate this opportunity, and we thank the panelists. Please join me in doing so.